used to think I knew what heartbreak felt like. But that moment, in the freezing rain of late afternoon, I learned the human heart can shatter in a single second. I was walking home down the familiar road lined with abandoned houses. The wind howled through rusted tin roofs, dragging a hollow creak with it. The rain wasn't heavy, but it was relentless, steady, as if determined to tear apart what was already dead and silent in the air. My steps splashed through puddles. All I wanted was to get home quickly. And then my eyes froze. A small black shape lay curled up in the middle of the path. At first, I thought it was just a wet rag, or maybe a tossed-aside trash bag. But something in me refused to walk on. A vague pull. A call from deep in the marrow. I stepped closer. Lightning tore across the sky, and I saw it clearly. It was a puppy. A tiny Doberman, no more than 2 or 3 months old. But instead of curious eyes and clumsy innocence, what I saw left my whole body numb. It was bound tight in silver duct tape. Strips wound across its chest, its belly, all 4 legs, layer over layer, pressing so hard the skin had turned purple. Its muzzle sealed shut. Not a sound could escape. Rain trickled down its small face, seeping into the cold glue of the tape. I dropped to my knees beside it. Mud splattered my clothes, but I didn't care. My hands shook as they touched the small body, rigid, ice cold. But when I leaned closer, I heard it. A breath, faint, broken. The world spun. It was still alive. My throat locked, my vision blurred, rain mixing with tears until I couldn't tell them apart. Pain surged sharply in my chest. Someone had done this. Someone had chosen for it to die here. I looked around. The street was empty, not a soul. Black windows loomed like hollow sockets. The whole world seemed to have abandoned it, just me, and this life hanging by a thread. A voice screamed inside my head. "Walk away! This isn't your fight. You don't know who did this. What if they come back? You're just a middle-aged woman walking alone, empty-handed. You can't win!" My fist clenched. Fear rose hot in my blood. But then another voice surged from deeper within, trembling but fierce. "If you leave, it dies here. Dies in silence. Dies alone." I looked down. Its small belly heaved in jerks, as if each second of survival was a battle. And in that moment, I knew I had no choice left. I pulled my phone from my soaked bag. My hand slipped, trembling hard, but somehow I managed to dial Animal Rescue. When the line connected, my voice broke out in fragments, like it might collapse. Please come quickly. There's a puppy tied up on the street. He won't make it. Please, hurry." I sank beside it, letting the rain hammer my shoulders, streaming down my face. My hand rested over its chest, feeling that fragile breath, terrifyingly thin. I bent closer, whispering, as if making a promise I wasn't even sure I could keep. "Don't give up. Do you hear me? I'm here now. You're not dying here. I swear it." Another flash split the sky, lighting up the tiny body wrapped cruelly in silver tape. My heart clenched hard, stabbing with pain. And I knew this night would haunt me for the rest of my life. I don't know how long I sat there in the rain. The world blurred around me, and all I could see was that tiny body lying motionless in the puddle. Any moment, that faint, broken breath could vanish for good. The echo of the call still rang in my ears. Rescue had promised they were on their way. But in that wait, each second stretched into the weight of a lifetime. I was terrified that I would have to watch this little soul slip away right before my eyes. Then I heard footsteps. A figure rushed toward me, hood pulled over his head, rain streaming down his face. He was panting. You called rescue, right? I'm Marcus, a volunteer." I nodded, my voice breaking. "Please, he's not going to last much longer." Marcus dropped to his knees beside me. He pulled a small rescue shears from his pocket, steel glinting cold under the lightning. His eyes locked with mine, steady, unshaken. "We need to cut this tape now. If not, he'll suffocate." I nodded again and again, cradling the trembling head in my hands. Marcus pressed the blade against the duct tape wound tight around the pup's belly. I held my breath. The scissors sliced through with a sharp screech that cut through the storm. The pup's body jerked violently. A muffled whimper broke in its throat, raspy, choked, freezing my blood. "He's still reacting," Marcus said quickly. "That's a good sign. Hold him steady for me." I wrapped my arms around that fragile frame, feeling every shudder, every fractured breath scorching against my skin. Marcus kept cutting, strip by strip. Each time the tape tore away, bruised flesh appeared, raw red marks dug deep into the skin. My throat burned, my eyes blurred. When the last piece around the legs came free, Marcus gently lifted its head. Only one strip remained, sealing its muzzle shut. He hesitated, drawing a deep breath. "This is the hardest part. Too rough, and will hurt him worse. Too slow, and he could suffocate." I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I held its head, whispering, "Stay with us, little one. Stay." Marcus gritted his teeth, slid the blade into the tiny gap between skin and tape. Rain hammered down, the scissors slipping, then pressing again. One cut, another. Then, rip. The tape split open. At that instant, a ragged gasp burst free. Hoarse, weak, but to me it thundered louder than any trumpet I'd ever heard. I broke down, tears spilling, mingling with the storm, falling onto its soaked fur. "He's breathing!" I cried, voice cracking wide open. Marcus exhaled hard, the scissors still in his hand, but his eyes lit with a flash of hope. "We made it in time, but he's fragile. We need to move him now." I gathered the pup into my arms. He was so light he felt like a handful of dry leaves. Yet beneath my palm I felt his tiny heart pounding, frantic but alive, like a fading drum that refused to quit. We sprinted through the rain toward the rescue truck pulling up. Marcus swung the door open. I laid the pup onto a worn blanket waiting inside. His eyes fluttered open for a moment, glazed, uncertain, and then they fixed on me. In that second, I felt it. He didn't know who I was, but somehow he understood. I had chosen not to walk away, and he had chosen to keep fighting. I pressed my hand to his chest, whispering once more, "You're not alone. I promise." The engine roared, carrying us into the storm. I held close to him, listening to the rasp of his breath over the growl of the motor. My whole body trembled, yet inside, a small flame of hope burned stubborn and fierce. I didn't know what awaited me, but I knew one thing for certain. He would never be left to fall again. The rescue truck tore through the rain, the engine's roar tangled with the ragged breaths of the tiny pup. I sat pressed close, my palm on his chest, counting every frantic heartbeat, terrified that if I looked away for even a moment, it would stop. Marcus sat up front, glancing at me through the mirror now and then. "Keep him awake. Talk to him. Don't let him slip into silence." I bent down, my voice trembling, whispering into the damp fur, the sour scent of tape still clinging to his skin. "Can you hear me? I'm here. Don't give up. Please don't." He didn't open his eyes. Just a faint twitch, breaths erratic, but I knew he heard. I had to believe he did. When the truck screeched to a halt, harsh white neon lights from the rescue center cut across my vision. The doors swung open. Marcus carried him inside. I ran after them. They laid him on a steel table in the emergency room. The air reeked of antiseptic, blood, and wet fur. It strangled my throat. A woman in scrubs leaned in, examining each wound, her tone clipped and grim. "Very weak. We'll get fluids in, warm him up. Beyond that, we wait." I stood against the wall, trembling, fists clenched so hard my nails broke skin. The whole world blurred except for the sight of him lying there, limp and silent. When the first round of emergency care was done, they moved him into a small cage, tucking him under a warm blanket. Others left the room. I couldn't. I wouldn't. I sank to the floor before the cage, eyes locked on him. Chance. That's what they said they'd call him. A promise. A chance. But looking at his shrunken body, I feared it was only a word. The night stretched endlessly. The room was hushed, save for the tick of the clock and his rattled, fragile breathing. Each pause sent my heart into a vice. I'd lean close to the bars, straining, waiting for the sound to return. I spoke constantly, afraid silence might swallow us both. "You know something? I've never seen anyone fight like you. That tape tried to take your breath, but you pushed back. I swear, if you survive this, no one will ever hurt you again. Not ever." At one point, his eyelids fluttered. I pressed my face to the bars, whispering, "That's it. Open your eyes. Show me you hear me." But he sank back into stillness. The sound of my own sobs cracked through the sterile room. A nurse passed, pausing. "You should rest. We'll keep watch." I shook my head, wiping my face, voice breaking. "If he wakes, and no one's here, he'll think he's been abandoned again. I can't let that happen." The nurse said nothing more, only nodded softly and left me be. Time dragged cruelly. I sat slumped against the cold wall, never looking away from the small figure curled under the blanket. Sometimes I thought I heard whispers carried in those broken breaths. "Don't leave. Stay." So I stayed. All night. I didn't sleep. Didn't blink for long. I only listened. Every rasp pulled me back from the brink. Every tiny twitch held me captive in breathless waiting. That night, I learned something. Life is fragile. And because it is fragile, it demands to be held on to. When dawn crept pale through the blinds, the first light touched the cage. His breathing was steadier, slightly, but enough to stir warmth in my chest. I pressed my hand to the bars, a tear-stained smile breaking through. "You did it. I knew you wouldn't let go." After that endless night, I felt as if I had lived an entire lifetime. But the next morning, the weight came crashing back. The doctors decided the pup needed scans. I followed, my chest tight, as if it were my own sentence I was about to hear. The room was white and cold, lit by neon lights that felt almost cruel. They placed him on the table, machines ticking with a dry, mechanical beat. I stood in the corner, hands clasped so tightly they bled, eyes fixed on him without blinking. When the screen lit up with results, I saw the doctor's face darken. Silence swept the room. My heart thundered, each second stabbing like a blade. I had to ask, my voice trembling on the edge of breaking. Is something wrong?" An older doctor, eyes heavy with burden, looked at me and sighed. "His liver is severely damaged. We're not sure he'll survive. Even with treatment, the odds are slim, and the costs will be significant." I went numb. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the table just to stay standing. The words crashed like thunder inside my skull. Liver. Severe. Not sure he'll survive." A nurse hesitated, then leaned in, whispering, "The truth is, his former owners knew. They didn't want to spend money. They didn't even choose euthanasia. They just abandoned him, left him out there to die." My whole body shook. The cold from the floor seeped straight into my heart. The image of him wrapped in duct tape under the storm spun violently through my mind. It hadn't been chance. It hadn't been neglected. They had known, and they had chosen the cruelest way. Discard him. The doctor's voice cut through, firm but almost apologetic. "We need to know. Are you certain you want to continue? If we start, it must be now. But liver treatment, blood transfusions, prolonged medication, the expense will be high, and there's no guarantee." I didn't answer right away. Through the glass, I saw him curled under the blanket, eyes shut tight, body twitching from exhaustion. I heard my heart whisper, "He's still breathing. He still wants to live." Another voice screamed inside me, "You don't have the money. That's your entire savings. What will you live on in your old age?" But then his eyes flickered open, clouded, weak, but searching. And when they met mine, I knew my answer. I drew a deep breath. My hand trembled so badly I could hardly hold the pen. But I signed. I signed the papers committing to cover every cost, the life savings I had guarded for years. As the ink scratched across the page, tears streamed down my face. I knew this choice could change the course of my life, but I felt no regret, because if I turned away, he would die, and that death would haunt me forever. The doctor stared at me, startled. "You're certain? This is an enormous burden." I wiped my tears, my voice breaking but steady. "The burden would be leaving him to die alone, saving him. That's not a burden. It's the only thing I can do." The room fell silent again, but this time my heart felt steadier. I had chosen, and I would not turn back. When they wheeled him into the treatment room, I walked beside him, my hand resting on that frail little body. I whispered, half to him, half to myself, "Do you hear me? I've staked my whole life on you. You don't get to quit. You can't." That night, I left the hospital with swollen eyes, but in my chest glowed a fragile faith that this sacrifice would not be in vain, that he would choose to live for both of us. I didn't know how I had any tears left to cry. After signing that fateful paper, I sat slumped in the hallway, hands locked together as if letting go would make everything slip away. They had taken him into treatment for hours. I had no idea what was happening behind those doors. All I knew was that every time footsteps passed, my chest froze, terrified the doctors would stop, look at me, and shake their heads. And yet, miraculously, he survived the first procedure. When the doctor stepped out and told me, I collapsed into the chair and sobbed like a child. "He still has a chance," they said. "A fragile one." But for me, that was enough. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. I arrived at the rescue center each morning, stayed until late into the night, and dragged myself home only when exhaustion demanded it. They gave him fluids, medicine, monitored every reaction. I sat by his cage, sometimes reading, sometimes stitching an old scarf, sometimes just watching. I didn't even know what I was waiting for, except one more minute, one more hour of breath. On the third day, I sat in that old plastic chair, my hand resting on the bars as always. Suddenly I saw it. A faint stir. He lifted his head. His eyes, clouded and lost, searched the room as if he couldn't believe anyone was still there. Then, slowly, he moved closer. My heart stopped. I barely dared to breathe. Bit by bit, his frail body dragged forward. And then, his head touched my hand. Lightly, testing, a fragile, trembling touch. I bit my lip until it bled. Tears burst free. My voice broke in a whisper. "That's right. I'm here. You don't have to be afraid anymore." He didn't pull back. Instead, he leaned his whole weight against me, all that little strength pressed into my hand. That gesture was small, but to me, it was everything. Because after all the pain, he had chosen to trust. Marcus passed by, stopped, and smiled softly. "That's the first sign. He's chosen you." I looked up, tears streaking my face, and nodded. I didn't need anyone to explain. I knew this was the moment I had begged for. From that day, I brought a wool blanket and spread it in front of his cage. I sat there, day after day, while he began to watch me. At first, just with his eyes. When I stood to leave, his ears twitched. When I returned, his eyes flickered, almost in relief. By the 5th day, I opened the cage to change his bandages. Fear churned in me, afraid he'd flinch, that the terror in his eyes would return. But he didn't. He lay quietly in my arms. When my hand brushed his neck, he sighed, a small, fragile exhale, like releasing a weight he had carried too long. "Good boy, Chance," I whispered. "You know, I'm proud of you." He couldn't understand my words, but his amber eyes shimmered under the light, and I realized some languages don't need speech. Some promises live in a single glance. One morning, when I walked into the room, he staggered to his feet. His legs wobbled, his body still weak, but he tried, just to show me. I froze, clutching my chest, tears spilling. "Oh God, you're walking for me, aren't you?" He took a few steps, then collapsed. I rushed forward, panic rising. But before I could lift him, he tilted his head and pressed his cold nose against my knee. I dropped down, gathering him into my arms, sobbing openly. "I promise. Every sacrifice is worth it, as long as you live. Please don't leave me." This time, he didn't just lean on my hand. He pressed his head against my chest, listening to my heartbeat like a child seeking a mother's warmth. And I felt something shift inside me. The old wounds, the ones I thought would never heal, were beginning to mend. That day marked a turning point. He ate a few spoonfuls of broth. He let me clean his wounds without panic. He slept more peacefully, knowing I was near. And each time his eyes opened, the first thing he looked for was me. One night, long after the lights were out, I drifted half asleep beside his cage. I felt a wet nose brush my hand. I opened my eyes. He was struggling out of the blanket, weak but determined just to reach me. I broke down, fumbling to open the door, lifting him into my arms. He burrowed into my chest, breathing steadily as he fell asleep. I sat there the whole night, cradling him, stroking his fur, terrified that if I let go, he would vanish. And I realized, healing doesn't come in one moment. It comes in countless nights and days, in every glance, every touch. Until one day, the wall of fear finally crumbles. And what remains is trust. The next morning, Marcus found me in the hallway. He gave me a rare smile and said quietly, "I've seen a lot of cases, but not all of them choose to live. He's choosing because of you." I couldn't answer. I only clutched the wool blanket in my hands, damp with tears. I knew Marcus was right. It wasn't just me saving him, he was saving me too. Me. I thought my journey with Chance would be nothing but hospitals, medicine, and endless nights of prayer. But one morning, Marcus walked in with a different look on his face. He pulled up a chair beside me, his voice low. "There's news. The police reviewed the cameras around that abandoned factory, and they found something you need to know. I looked up, my chest tightening. What is it? Marcus clenched his hands, a flash of anger in his eyes. They have proof. A man living near there was caught on video throwing puppies out. Chance was one of them. His words cut straight through me like a blade. I gripped the edge of the table just to keep from collapsing. Images flickered in my mind. That tiny body bound in tape, curled in the rain. Not accident, not neglect. Intentional. I forced myself to ask, my voice strangled. How long has he been doing this? Marcus sighed. Too long. People nearby saw things, but no one dared confront him. He threatened, kept to himself. But this time is different. The cameras caught everything. The police have him in custody. At the preliminary hearing, I was there. I didn't think I was strong enough, but something inside told me I had to see it. I had to look into the face of the darkness that had cast Chance aside. He walked in, wrists shackled. A middle-aged man with eyes like stone, empty, unrepentant. He scanned the room, even smirked, mocking. My hands trembled violently, and I clutched the wool scarf in my pocket to keep from breaking down. The judge read the charges. Animal cruelty, abandoning a gravely ill animal, deliberately letting them die in slow pain. The room stirred with outrage. I heard a woman whisper behind me, "We've suspected him for years. Now there's no denying it." He stood unmoved, eyes glacial. When asked if he wanted to defend himself, he shrugged, voice blunt, dismissive. "They're just dogs. Cost too much to feed. I don't need them." The courtroom erupted. My throat locked, my heart crushed in a fist. But I saw, in that instant, the judge's face harden. When the hearing ended and they led him away, I felt no triumph. There was no victory here, only the ache of knowing some people see life as nothing but disposable waste. And yet, at the same time, a breath of relief. Justice had not turned away. That afternoon, I returned to the rescue center. Chance was still in his cage, those weary eyes lifting toward me. I knelt, brushed my fingers against his frail paw, and whispered, "Listen to me. The one who hurt you, he's gone. You don't have to be afraid anymore." He couldn't understand my words, but his ears flicked. Then he pressed his head against the bars, against the place where my hand rested. That small act broke me. It was an answer. "I know. I trust you." From the doorway, Marcus smiled softly. "The darkness is uncovered now. All that's left for him is light." I turned, nodded, and in that moment, I understood. What we had fought for wasn't just life. It was proof that truth will always claw its way out, and that justice had finally spoken for a soul who could never speak for himself. That night, sitting by his cage, I told Chance everything, like telling a child, about the courtroom, about the neighbors who had stepped forward, about the fury in the room when they heard him sneer, "They're just dogs." I spoke through tears, but my voice grew steadier. "You're not just a dog. You are the reason I believe love still exists, and you've given me more than I ever dared hope for." He closed his eyes, exhaled, pressing closer to my hand, and I knew. Justice wasn't only for him. It was for every living being, so none would ever have to die in silence again. It's been a year since that night of rain. A year since I knelt trembling, cutting through the cold bands that bound a fragile body and whispered that he would not die alone. Now, sitting on the porch of my small wooden house, I can hardly believe what I see. Before me, across the green grass, a tall, powerful Doberman runs free beneath the sun. His black and tan coat glows like burnished copper. Every stride is fluid, brimming with strength. Each leap feels like it could tear open the sky. It's still him, Chance. No longer that shivering shape in a puddle. No longer the cloudy, terrified eyes. Now those amber eyes blaze with life. I call softly, "Chance!" He stops in the yard, ears perked. In a heartbeat, he's racing toward me. I open my arms, and with all the reckless joy of a child, he launches into my embrace, knocking me flat against the porch. I laugh through tears, clutching his warm body close. He licks my face, tail thrashing wildly, eyes shining as if to say, "I kept my promise. I didn't leave you. I lived." I whisper, my voice breaking. "Chance, you didn't just survive. You taught me how to live again." In the afternoons, I open the gate and let him run across the small field out back. He chases butterflies, barks at swirling leaves. I sit watching, heart full of gratitude. Sometimes I still ask myself, how did he endure it all? The tape that crushed his chest, the failing liver, the betrayal of human hands. And then I realize he endured because he chose to believe in a chance, to believe in me. Marcus still visits. Each time he sees Chance, he shakes his head with a smile. I swear, there were moments I thought he wouldn't make it. But you believed. And he believed you. That's all it took. I smile back. No words needed. We both know the miracle we're looking at. Some nights, when the wind rustles through the trees, I remember it all. That vision has never faded. A tiny body bound in tape, waiting for death. The memory still tightens my chest, but now the pain is no longer a wound. It's a reminder that every life deserves a chance. One day, a neighbor's child stood by the fence, watching Chance play. He asked me, "Why is his name Chance?" I bent down, patted his head, then pointed to the dog bounding across the yard. Because he was given a second chance, and he turned it into a whole new life. The boy thought for a moment, then smiled. In his young eyes, I saw it, the seed of compassion being planted. I believe we cannot change the whole world. But sometimes, saving just one life changes everything. At least for that life. And for our own. Chance cannot speak. He cannot thank me with words. But every morning, when I wake and find him curled beside me, his wet nose pressed against my hand, his bright eyes opening to meet mine, I know. That is the deepest thank you of all. He gave me a gift no money could ever buy. The gift of trust. The gift of unconditional love. Once a friend asked me, "Don't you regret it? Spending your entire life savings for a dog?" I looked out at the yard, where Chance lay in the sun, ears pricked, glancing at me now and then. I smiled and answered, "Regret? If I had turned away that night, I would have lived forever in regret. But because of that choice, my days are now filled with laughter and those eyes. What could possibly be more valuable than that?" My friend said nothing, but I knew. I had chosen right. I reached down, stroked his sleek coat, whispered, "Chance, you proved something. That sometimes one small chance is enough to change fate. You weren't just rescued. You rescued me. You gave me a reason to believe again." He lifted his head, amber eyes blazing in the sunset, holding my gaze. No words, but I understood. We have each other, and that's everything. I nodded softly, tears slipping down my cheeks, tears of joy this time. And in the glow of evening, I knew our story didn't end here. It would go on, in every bounding step he took, in every smile I had found again, and in every heart opened by love. Perhaps the image that haunts me most is not the tape wrapped around his fragile body, but the look in his eyes that first night, the trembling plea, "Please don't abandon me again." And I promised. I kept that promise. But I also know, out there, countless others still wait in the shadows for a hand to reach out. If this story has touched your heart, please do one small thing. Don't turn away when you see a life in need. A single act can become a second chance, not just for them, sometimes for us as well. Have you ever saved a dog, a cat, or any living soul? Share your story in the comments. Let love spread wider so no heart is left alone in the dark. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because who knows, you might be the reason another life gets its second chance.